Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Duma Draws. I haven't made one of these in, I think, a year. I used to do these all the time when I was like really little. I think I used to make episodes in 2011 or 2012, and Jesus, that must have been like 8 years ago when I was 12. 12 or 14 or something like that. That's just really funny to me. I'm going to do these based off of my most popular episode, which was How to Draw Furry Eyes. And so this episode is pretty much just going to be a remake of sorts, just because that episode is so old. And basically, what I'm going to do is draw a very simple model of, I guess, like a head of some kind of maybe a wolf, and just do a demonstration about how eyes can affect your art. And in my last couple of episodes, I explained and would like to reiterate that art is kind of just a way of getting a message across. If you can look at something and take something from it, it's art. And it doesn't necessarily matter if it's realistic or good or bad or whatever have you, so long as it's kind of making you happy, it's serving a purpose, you know? And so I did mess up the ears a bit, in my opinion, but the way I'm going to show eyes in this episode is going to be kind of indicative of whatever style you might have. A lot of people have different ways of drawing eyes. You know, some people will just draw the upper eyelid and then like a pupil, and from there you can be like, oh, that's an eye, and then like have an eyebrow maybe, and some people, instead of having just like an upper eyelid and a dot, they would like to have an eye a little bit sharper. Like if it was a wolf, they would want to draw something that looks like a bit more feral or gives that wild kind of look. And I do like drawing eyes like that on more wild types of characters. Some people like to get very detailed with their eyes and give them a specific shape that the other characters in their arsenal might not have. And from there, they'll might put in something like a highlight or a pupil. I tend to give all of my characters, regardless if I'm drawing an animal or a pet or something, I tend to give them more realistic eye. No, not realistic. Sorry, more I guess human types of eyes, regardless of what they're supposed to look like. And I think is my no, I need that royalty-free music. Oh my goodness. Can I please have royalty-free music today on this beautiful, fine Monday? Here we go. With YouTube copyright system, we just can't play with that, huh? Oh, right. And so, yeah, I tend to draw eyes in a very specific way. I've been kind of drawing eyes the same way ever since I was really little, so I tend to stick with that very strongly, just because I love the way that they look and it makes me the happiest. So that's how people come up with an eye style that they really love, is just if you look at a piece of art that you're doing and it brings you joy, then that's the only thing you need, right? Only thing that you need to worry about is making yourself happy. Doesn't necessarily matter what anybody else wants from you. So when I draw eyes, I tend to draw them with a simple, pure white reflection, just one circle. Oh, and sometimes I'll draw another circle behind it and then one to the side. And that's just so the eyes look super shiny, and that makes me very happy. Then I'll kind of color the eye in one color and separate it with these two rings over here, and that's so I can kind of make the effect way more dramatic. I love kind of that dramatic shiny look, and I'll just kind of do splotches in the eye. Even though it's not necessarily the most realistic thing in the world, it's just very interesting to look at, I feel. And even when the rest of my drawing is what I think is simplistic, or what I would consider simplistic for me, other people draw way more simplistic. Like if you look at Gudetama or another kind of character, you might just have circles for eyes and like a little happy smile, and that's a character, and that's it. And then other people might want to be way more realistic in their design and go for something that kind of, you look at it and you can tell what species of animal it might be, or like things about a personality or anything like that. And I think I did this a little crooked. That's okay though. I think one of the things I used to do when I first started drawing that I don't necessarily do anymore, but it was just the way I used to draw, is when I used to draw like a character of any kind, is I would kind of just draw their neck to like one side, like very much to the right, even if they were like facing forward or something. And I'd always put it all the way to the right or all the way to the left, and it'd always be super skinny. And I remember getting like a comment on a YouTube video back in like 2008 or something, like, why do you draw necks like that? It's so weird. And it's like, but I like it. You know? And that's all you need, is to like something. Well, enough on this. I'm going to go into some eye details now. Basically, eyes can be anything that you would like. They can be, a lot of animals in general tend to kind of have this, like, how would I explain it? It's like you had a gigantic circle, right? And that was an entire eyeball. And your eye is kind of like holding it in place, if that makes any sense. Or for people, that kind of results in this very circular shape and more almond-shaped eyes, tear ducts, and whatever have you, eyelashes. But when you do the eye of, let's say, an animal, then you can get usually like the entirety of the color of their eye is kind of the only thing that you see. You don't really see the whites of like a cat's eye or like a dog, or at least something I've kind of noticed is the eye takes up so much more space than if you were to draw like a person. Like if you drew a human eye, then the whites of their eye would take up quite a bit of space. And if you're not even drawing the whites of their eye, like if you're drawing eyes kind of like this, which I do sometimes, then you can kind of notice it. Versus if you drew a more animalistic kind of character, it might take up a lot more space. And then you can draw like, what's it called? Like if a cat has their eyes slit and everything. But yeah, that's something I've noticed with animals in general, is just kind of their eyes take up so much more space in their head. It's very interesting. And because like you're kind of drawing their eye and around, like the eyes are still surrounded by fur usually, unless you're drawing like one of those cats that doesn't really have any fur or anything, or like a furless dog, for example. When I draw, if you draw these characters, their eyes are not going to necessarily wrinkle the same way as, like, let's say a dragon or like an older person you might be drawing. you won't really have that in like a cat or a dog or anything like that. But you, the same way that you have like that double eyelid in people, I still draw it regardless of the characters. So it's something that makes me happy. But you can never quite get that same level of detail on skin as you would in fur. Everything kind of would be covered, if that makes any sense. Like, all the fur would cover any wrinkles in the skin. Which is why if you have a hairless cat and they're like super wrinkly, which is kind of fun to look at, their skin wrinkles way more than we think it does, and it's so covered by fur that you won't notice. So yeah, like animals and stuff tend to have a lot a lot bigger eyes than a person. Is kind of the first thing I wanted to say. Usually, what I do when I'm drawing eyes is I tend to break things down into 3 parts, or for the eye itself, not talking about the eyelid or the shape of the eye or anything like that. The eye, I kind of like this, what's it called? Let me draw the shape out. I like doing this very, like, rhombus shape, I suppose. Oh, whoops. Okay. So it's like if you took a like, rectangle and you made the sides kind of align like that. Like, I don't know what that's even called. But it's very much like this diagonal shape. And then basically I'll play with the way that it curves. Like, I'll start drawing it, right? And maybe I'll draw these 2 lines first. And then I'll be like, for this eye, right? I want this to shape a little bit downwards, and I want this part to shape over here. And then I kind of connect the lines best as I can. Mostly let me not erase that actually. Mostly you want to have 4 parts of any eye you draw if you're going to draw for a more dynamic or realistic style and not something very simple. Is you're going to have 4 parts of the eye. And they don't necessarily have to be straight lines. Like, even connecting these 2 dots, it kind of slants a little bit, if that makes sense. It's not a perfect cross. Let's see. And playing with how you have those 4 parts of the eye spaced out can really change things out. Like, if you have this very square shape, you can have a very young character. Like, let me fill this in for you with an eye in my normal style. Ooh, that part goes way more down, huh? And let me cover some of the red. When you play around with the shape of whatever eye you're drawing, you can make characters seem younger or older. I noticed the more like a direct square. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. The more like a square you draw something, the younger the character is gonna look. Like this eye over here. And then the more kind of stretched out, like if you have like a little triangle here and then really stretch this out over to the side. And let's actually make this paler. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna make this a lighter shade so I can draw on top of it easier. Okay. And the longer you kind of, I still have opacity lock on. The longer you kind of make an eye, the older character might seem. Though I feel like the example that I chose was kind of ridiculous. By making things more dynamic, you can kind of make a character look more serious or more childish, and that's that's one of the ways you can kind of play with the 4 points of this little almost rhombus kind of shape, right? And actually, you can pretty much do the same exact technique even if you're doing like a really simple eye, right? Like let's say we just draw the front part of this rhombus right here. Let's add some eyelashes, whatever. And let's say if you made it really long and that square one from over here. Even if you're going for a very simplified look and what you're drawing, you can kind of bring over the same secrets and effects from other tutorials and apply it to your style, even if it's not necessarily what you're going to exactly do. So that's for the shape of the eye. Now when you actually draw an eye, going into what I said before, I tend to divide everything up into 3 parts for the eye. And this goes regardless of whether I'm drawing a more humanistic character or animalistic character. In this small circle tends to be perfect, or even more of like an oval for cats or something like that, right? What I do is I draw the pupil, and then I kind of draw another ring around the pupil. And I try making everything as circular as possible because that's just how I like it. Some people like drawing their eyes very boxy. You might notice that in like certain TV shows, or other artists might draw their eyes as squares, which is also a completely valid way to draw eyes. Just whatever shape you want to use, go right on ahead. And so let me show you. So I tend to draw 2 parts around my eyes, and not just because I think it's easier to draw reflections like that. It's not realistic, but it is interesting. And then I erase the little part. There's that one circle I like to use for reflections. And this outer ring, or the middle part, I usually will shade in a completely dark color. And this outer ring, I will tend to keep very dark. And the inner ring, I will make a lot brighter than the outer ring. And even without shading, you can see that it leaves this very interesting effect where the inner eye pops out and it makes that pupil like stand out a lot more. And this is actually the same way that I drew the eye over here earlier. So I do feel like maybe I want it to be bigger and more dramatic. Oh, and here's another interesting thing about eyes. So if you're drawing a character of any kind and you want them to appear younger, then they tend to have bigger and more dramatic eyes, and everything about their features tends to be a bit rounder. And if you're drawing like a more serious kind of character, then everything about their features will tend to be sharper and smaller. Let me try to explain this, even though I'm not doing faces this episode, since it's just a remake of an old one. Is characters with rounder faces tend to look younger. And have that cuter kind of effect. And characters that are like more serious or older tend to have these sharp looks to them. And I'll probably do like face shapes in another episode, seeing that I've been doing the series for a very long time, but this kind of change in shapes really does define how you want your characters to look when you draw them. And like I said, things that are circular tend to look a lot younger. Things that are more angled tend to be a lot more serious. And same thing with eye shapes. Is a more rounded eye shape is a lot gentler. And a sharper one tends to be a lot more serious. Sorry if I'm just repeating myself a whole lot. This is very much an ad-lib. Alright, and so that's my remake on episodes by Eyes, and just try out playing with any style you really think of. When I was a kid, I used to just draw eyes as a curved line, some kind of very squarish shape, a circle, and then I drew a T. I used to draw like a literal letter T, and that would be it. And that would be an eye for me, and that's perfectly fine. Even, I guess older Mickey Mouse cartoons, or like those older sort of cartoons that just have like a triangle taken out. Obviously it worked for Mickey, right? And he's a mouse. If you have like a character that might have those kind of eyes, or mix and match, like have that kind of dynamic eye shape from before, and just do that same kind of cutout. And then maybe fill it with a color that you really like green. No, actually green will mix weird. Let's do purple. And an eye can be one solid color if you want it to be, or it could be even a mix of colors. Like add some yellow on the bottom, or have different parts of your eye just be different colors to make them stand out. And just play with your style as much as you want to, and you might come up with something that you really, really love. One of the things I've seen a lot is actually drawing of white people, and I actually really love. Java's updating. I really love the way that it looks when there's like this white pupil in the eye. I feel like it makes the color stand out if you're doing some really interesting colors. And I think it just makes your drawing very interesting. So I've done a couple of characters I've drawn too. Oh, I even have a character that has eyes that are just like ridges, if that makes any sense. Like, if you just keep drawing spirals all the way around, and that's his eye, and it's filled up with one color. And that's it. And I think some people draw eyes a lot more realistically, like, they draw them the inner tissue of your eye kind of likes to fold over on itself. So they'll draw like the actual folding over of the tissue in your eye, and your pupil is kind of this void, but it actually goes into, like, you can see the tissue folding into and around the pupil of an eye if you really zoom in and look closely at it. So there's plenty of people that will draw kind of these shapes extending outwards, and they'll shade accordingly. And from there, they will kind of mix into that dark color of the eye, and you'll have the what's it called? Not necessarily healthier color, but the main focus of the eye will actually be kind of blended into the pupil. And let's see, let's get some ridges. And then instead of doing like playing around with color a certain way, they'll actually cover the eye with this kind of white overlay. And then do a slightly more realistic highlight, like reflecting off of windows, or even shading based off of the way that the room is structured. And again, they keep that pupil as dark as possible. So if you have a reflection of your eye, it's reflecting off that upper layer of your eye. So the reflection won't actually be, one sec. The white little thing over here actually won't be crazy strong. Like, there we go. And so something like this might work for other artists who's having a slightly more realistic view of how to draw with eyes, even though mine probably isn't the best example of how to draw something a bit on the realistic side. But that's more of a thing for using an actual photo example, I suppose, wouldn't it? Yeah, don't be afraid to play with shapes and reflections, how you actually detail the eye, or choose not to detail it on purpose. Add as many reflections as you'd like. I know some people, they'll draw an eye, and from there they'll draw the pupil. So let me show you actually. Let's do red, since I guess I've kind of made it the color of choice today. And yes, let's color this in. I'm doing that 2-layer technique of one circle inside of the other. And then I'll actually shade this a bit more. So using the same technique as before and kind of doing that 2 circles inside of each other technique. And then the one thing I see people do like a lot is they'll actually draw like really, really cute reflections in the eye. Like they'll do like stars, and then like a bright yellow, let's do like a reflection of this really shiny sparkle. A 4-pointed star. There we go. Then they'll do like, the lines and everything, or something like that. And I kind of like this idea of putting a very bright color on the inside. Let's see, maybe even a bit more purpley, and let's do a smiley face. Heart. clover, spades, diamond, and a heart. And so they'll have all these really fun colors on the inside of the eye, and I really love it when you just have fun with what you're doing. I'm really digging whenever people do these kind of really fun reflections on the inside of the eye. And like I said, this idea that like realistic is better needs to choke. Because when you're having fun, that's really when your art shines, and it doesn't matter what anybody has to say about that. Actually, I kind of want to fix the bottom blush, make it a little bit rounder, since I had such a fun time with this eye. And do some really thick eyelashes. There we go. And some people, when they do like the whites of the eyes, will actually paint them in like this kind of grayish color. And oh no, you can see that I colored things in with white instead of using the eraser tool. Oh no. Okay. And so some people will color their ends or eyes with this kind of shade of gray for hashtag realism, and they'll actually take white and kind of blend it outward to give it a slightly more realistic white of the eyes effect. But I don't really go for realism, so I tend to just, instead of doing this, I actually go in with a bright blue, and I'll color in about half the eye, and then blur it a bit, and there we go, I call it a day. I don't tend to go for those like more saturated gray tones or anything like that. I just like that blue. I feel like it's really cute. And then of course you can change it up for any other color, like even this red, or a deeper blue, purple. Oh, I love the purple on this one actually. Pink. You can do whatever you want to the whites of the eyes, to be honest. It's all up to you. Maybe I should actually go for that pink again, because I had those pink highlights in the eye. I just think that they're really cute. Let's add yellow, actually, in the background. Oh, I love that. So, that's how I'm probably going to keep it. Some people also draw, like, highlights in the whites of the eye over here. And, like I said, it's all up into interpretation. I kind of like the, if you have a color going around the eye, like let's say, let's do like a very soft kind of gray around the eye over here. Oh, wait, let me try to slow it down. If you have like a soft gray or something around the eyes, right? And let me see. Oh. I have a lot of layers going on all of a sudden. I'm gonna merge these two down because they're cute. Okay. I really love is when you go around an eye and kind of adding that bit of white highlight to the bottom, or even some shine to the top, to kind of highlight it if the rest of the character is a different color. Like if let me try this gray out a lot more. I feel like it gives me that Lion King vibe. How there's like that soft color underneath the eye when you see a character on the big screen. Drew this on the wrong layer. I just really love the way that it looks. It's all dramatic. And you can obviously make this any color that you'd like if you went for yellow or even a vivid bright red. Or even, let's play with it more and fade it out. Into another color. Let's do this bright red and then blur it into that softer color. And probably gonna have to redo the eyelashes. But yeah, just have as much fun as you want. Art exists for you. And especially if you're posting something on the interwebs or YouTube or DeviantArt or whatever have you, even Facebook. One of the big things to take away is that this is like art is a tool of expression, and unless somebody's specifically paying you to draw something for them, nobody's opinion means anything. Unless they're filling your wallet or unless they're like giving you money on Patreon or something, if they say they don't like the way that you draw eyes now or they prefer something else or whatever have you, something that isn't, or even critique. Sometimes I feel like critique can be not very helpful depending on what kind of artist you are, whether you're freelance or even if you're taking commissions. If somebody tells you to change something, unless they paid for it, there's no need. So don't let anybody's review or comments or critique of your art let anything stop you or even change things to a style that you don't like. Just because other people think your art looks better a certain way doesn't mean that you should change it. It doesn't matter if it's better. If you have a very nice realistic art style, but you prefer to draw cartoons, draw as many cartoons as you want, you know? And with that, that is the end of my tutorial. Come back later for another episode of Duma Draws. I love you, and good night.